Hello, everybody, and welcome to Victory Never Sleeps. It's good to be back. I'm sorry I missed y'all last week. I was getting pretty used to these, so I'm glad to be back tonight. Joining us, we've got Gythia Catie Erickson, very good friend of mine, a woman that has been extremely active in the Asatru Folk Assembly, and specifically, she's done a lot of work and is running our Gothar training program. Hey, Katie, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Can you kind of start off this evening by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in Alsatru and then how you got involved in the Asatru Folk Assembly?
Sure. I'm Katie. I have been pagan or just, randomly out there in the pagan world for about 25 years now. Started when I was 12. I'm not super excited to admit it was because of the movie The Craft, but everybody starts somewhere, and that's where I got my start. I learned a lot after that, like that the craft was entirely false and people can't summon Mono and change their faces using magic and all that stuff. But I found a connection with the ideas of multiple deities and with the idea of finding our spirituality in nature and things like that appealed to me way more than my Catholic upbringing ever did. And so I just followed that for a long time by myself until I met some people in New Jersey where I grew up, and they introduced me to Theism, and technically got my start with Asatru through Theism. I was Theodish for about 10 years ish, yeah, and then eventually that sort of fell apart, and then I found the AFA through some, at the time, mutual friends. I met my husband at one of their events, and it sort of all spiraled from there. So I've been in the AFA since 2016. No looking back. It's been the best place I've been. So.
Well, great. I'm glad to hear that. I suppose before we start going on questions, I want to, give an update of folks of all the cool things that have happened the past couple of weeks. It's been a busy 2 weeks. On the 13th, we did our dedication of Njordshof, the fourth Hof of the Asatru Folk Assembly, and that Hof's in White Springs, Florida, for those that may not know, and that was a really powerful, really amazing event. Those folks down in Florida have worked so hard for this Hof, and they were so, so honored, and so it affected them so profoundly to be able to dedicate this Hof to Njord. It was a really, really special thing to see. I'm sure a lot of you have seen by now the mural that we have there, but Svan did a fantastic job on that. He's really, he's really up in his game with each one of these that comes around, and it's really impressive. If you guys ever get a chance to go see it, I would highly recommend it. But yeah, and then I made a really quick turnaround last week, and I went up to Baldershof for Fall Fest, and it is always very special to go to Baldershof, but those people have put so much love into the place. Every time I go there, there's new elements or things that they've repaired, or things that they've embellished and made prettier and made better. Their ancestor altar has been really beefed up and is amazing. Their Elsie Christensen altar is amazing. And the framing in work to frame where we have the mural of Balder and the dais up front, they did some gabling work there, and then some gold curtains, and it looks absolutely beautiful. So I hope everybody's gotten a chance to check out those pictures. So now is the time that I would plug our entropy, but Entropy's not working on my end, so I'm trying to get that figured out on the back end here. In the meantime, any of you guys questions, please make sure you get those out there, and Nick will get them to me on the side until I get my entropy situation figured out a little bit better. Once again, I apologize for that. Nick, if you could throw up the entropy link, because it appears that you are seeing it, so that's something. All right. Do we have any questions to start us out tonight? And I guess while we're waiting on those, could you tell us a little bit about what you do with our Gothar program? And first, I guess for people that want to know, what is that? And then what do you do in regards to that program?
Our new Gothar. Sorry, I got distracted by my screen. It blinked at me. And I'd like to think it's a comprehensive program. Whit, Brandy, Callahan, and I spent a lot of time going over all of the lesson plans and things like that. We designed our curriculum, I guess, to, as best as possible, train our potential Gothar to really understand what it means to be a Gothar, because our Gothar are not just people who show up and do weddings and stuff. We're the people who answer our phones at 3 a.m. when somebody's having an emergency or some sort of crisis of some sort. We're the people who are there to solve personal conflicts between individual members, and sometimes with people who aren't in the AFA. Like if you're having issues with your spouse who is not an AFA member, we are there to help with that. We've helped people with all kinds of things you can imagine and things you can't imagine. Our Gothar are there for the best things, but we're also there for the worst things, and trying to help our members realize that we are there always. You can reach out to any of us all the time is really hard. And what we do in the Gothar program basically is to make sure that our Gothi and Gythias are as prepared as possible to help our folk in every way that they can help our folk. Was there more to that question than I forgot?
No, just I guess what you do and how you're involved with it. I want people to really understand how much work you put into making that work, because I think it's one of those things that from the outside folks may just assume somehow spontaneously occurs, and it's important that folks realize we've got people behind the scenes that put in a lot of work to make sure that happens the right way.
Like I said, Whit and Brandy Callahan and I spent many weeks talking about the different curriculums and the different lesson plans we wanted to have in there, because we really wanted to make sure that our curriculum or our course was designed specifically for the AFA, and not just like a random anybody can take it and become a Gothar sort of thing. My job as the, I guess, administrator for the most part is to communicate with all of our mentors. We have our Gothar who mentor our new students, and they are their personal contacts throughout the course. They speak often. They're supposed to speak like twice a month, at least, on the phone. They are supposed to make sure that all of the assignments are being done and turned in. They're supposed to review all of them at the same time that they are doing that. My job is to make sure that they are doing that. So I'm supposed to be in constant contact with our mentors. I'm in constant contact with our students. I read every assignment that comes in through from our students. I read every single one of them. If there are issues with any of the assignments, I reach out to the students to talk about it, to see where the miscommunication or misunderstanding comes from, and to help them understand why in the AFA we might do things differently. That's not something that happens too often. Usually it comes to like if we're going over a counseling scenario and somebody's got a rigid stance on something that we don't really have a rigid stance on. My job is to like help them move past that, things like that. That's it. It's more than that. That's the bulk of the work though, is talking to everybody and reading all of the assignments and making sure everything is running the way it's supposed to run.
Well, and let me just say you do a phenomenal job at that. I know that it's stressful, and you guys have pretty much had to restructure the program entirely, and it's appreciated, and you're doing an amazing job at it. So I've got my entropy situation figured out now for a sec. I apologize about that, guys, and I got some questions up. Have a question from Brandy. What do you feel are the major differences, and this is for you, Katie, what do you feel are the major differences between your Theodish experience and the Asatru Folk Assembly?
Try to keep it brief. The biggest difference is the structure of Theism itself. In Theism, the entire structure is oath-based. So you have your equivalent of the Alsherjargothi at the top, and he has his Witten members, and then he has his Thanes. We'll call them Gothar for the sake of understanding, and then you have your everybody else. Everybody swears an oath to somebody who ranks above them. So the Witten members swear their oath to the Alsherjargothi. The Thanes swear their oath to one of the Witten members, and you choose an individual. It's not to all of the Witten members as a whole, it's to an individual. And then all of the regular people down there, just the regular members, would swear their oath to one of the Thanes or one of the Gothar. And this way, it creates like a web of oathing. We obviously don't do that in the AFA. Our oaths are to the AFA. And I feel like this is a much more practical way of doing it, because when you're Theism, for me, it was kind of like a men's club. I was one of very few women outside of family members who was actually Theidish and swore an oath. And it could be complicated sometimes. Not like it was a boys' club, and I was the chick who showed up and gave people beer when they asked for it, basically. And so, yeah, that doesn't happen. And there are a lot of conflicts with people in Theism because it's very ego-driven. Everybody wants to be the Witten member. Not everybody can be the Witten member, or the Waifed Thane, which is what they would have been called, because they like to use all the pretty Anglo-Saxon terms. The biggest difference after that would be that they were a Reconstructionist group. They believed in reconstructing what our ancestors did. So they read whatever they could from the Eddas, from Beowulf, from any historical sources that they had, and they tried to recreate that. The biggest problem with this is that it's a very backwards-facing faith. They're not looking forward to the future. They're not looking forward. Their faith, they're not moving forward with their faith. They're moving it backwards. And this becomes a really big problem, because then you have people who are like very focused on things like their honor in terms of martialness, which is, fighting. And if you hurt their honor, they're going to challenge you to home gang. And for anybody who doesn't know what that is, that's basically where you beat each other up, and whoever wins is the winner. And it's
that's to me, because the Theodsmen that I've seen don't strike me as the people that would be particularly good at that sort of combat.
Probably not so much. I'm sure some of them could have been surprising, but
fair enough. I would indeed be surprised. So we've got Daniel's got a question for you. What misconceptions about women in Asatru would you like to clear up?
Um, that were like the 1950s housewives who do nothing but, you know, make dinner for their husbands and are subservient. I have never met a subservient woman in the AFA. We have respectful women. We have women who are proud to be married to their husbands and who are happy and proud to fulfill the feminine role of a housekeeper and a mother. I'm one of those women. I don't have a job outside of the house. My job is to take care of my family. I'm very proud of that. I don't do it because I've been told I have to. I do it because I want to, because I think it's important for my children and it's important for my husband and it's important for myself. I think that's probably the biggest misconception people have about the AFA right now. They think that we're all into this 1950s LARPy role play where the women are ready with hot dinner on the table and will take your shoes off and put your slippers on and things like that.
First, those things are awesome, but secondly, that's something I would like understood about the AFA in general. And I think some of this has come about fairly when people are dissatisfied with the state of the world that we're in. It's very easy to get carried away with costuming and LARPing something from days gone by instead of organically trying to, I don't know, reinstill some values or some of the mindset. And it's very important in the AFA that we're not trying to pretend that we're anybody we're not. Not trying to pretend we're living in any age that we're not living in. We're modern folks living in 2022 and doing our very best to embody and live values that are eternal and timeless. And I think that's also a misconception. So Brandy asks, Alsherjargothi, what was your best memory or experience from both the dedication of Njordshof and Fall Fest? It's hard because there was, so many beautiful things at both of those events. As far as a fun memory, I've just got to throw out that folks in the kitchen, Mike and Pam did amazing. Mike Joyner, our folk builder in the area, made homemade sausage for us with homemade pulled pork and homemade rolls. And he made this amazing homemade gumbo that was fantastic. And the food there was really on point. But a little bit more serious on that one, seeing both of them just in tears and literally in an ecstatic state, being able to take such good care of us and present the feast at Njordshof was really cool to see. But my real favorite moment from Njordshof dedication was when, I believe it was at the Wayfarers Bloat, is it occurred to me, and I was telling everybody there that I was reiterating the significance of that moment. For the first time in thousands of years, we gave Njordur his very own Hof to be worshipped in. And on that day, when we gave him that and he looked out from his altar, ours were the faces that he saw. And that moves me very much even right now, recounting it. My favorite thing from Fall Fest, I don't know. There's wonderful things. Brandy, you got us set up with the most amazing B&B that leadership shared. So we had a place to stay, and it was this spectacular Victorian mansion. It was absolutely ridiculous in the best possible way. But also a real serious one on that was our sumble. And it wasn't a massive sumble, but it was a very, very special, very emotional, very intimate sumble. And there wasn't a dry eye in the house. It was really special, and I was honored to be a part of that. Pam says, I assume this is for Katie. Is it hard being a Gythia married to a Gothi?
uh, luckily for me, it is not. I don't know if that would be true across the board. But Witten Erickson and I often don't cross paths in the Gythia world. We're usually working on completely different things, and we are very much, we think very similarly about a lot of things, so we don't clash very often, which is nice. Usually he helps me when I'm having issues figuring certain things out, and occasionally I do the same for him. So no, I don't find it too terribly difficult.
Cody asks, Gythia Catie, what would you say to those young women wishing to join the AFA but thinking that it's nothing but a boys' club?
I'd say join. I hope that the misconception that we're a boys' club is starting to kind of go away, because the more pictures we post, the more often we find ourselves just inundated with women. Many people know this because I've said it before, or somebody else who isn't me has said it. 10 years ago, it would have been impossible to imagine a world where Asatru had this many women in it. And it was even more impossible to imagine Asatru with this many children in it. And you're never going to find pictures of another group with this many women and this many children in it. And I hope that that helps a lot with convincing women that we're not a boys' club and they should just join.
We have certainly been blessed with wonderful ladies and so many amazing children, and it's been really special to see. Apparently, while Entropy was acting up on me, Sunshine Sucks donated $10. We appreciate that so much. Thank you. Pam asks, Katie, do you ever feel less than because you are a woman?
No. The only time I ever feel less than as a woman is when I let my own personal self-esteem issues get in the way, like I think most women do. Society being what society is. In the AFA, I don't know. I have, maybe when I was Spanish, being a woman was a lot harder, and I could be a little more hard on myself because of the way I was treated, but I've never had that as an issue in the AFA, ever.
Don asks, as a religion with no so-called 10 commandments, how can modern Asatru help someone be a better person in daily life today? Katie, go ahead and take a swing at that
one. I feel like being a good person is sort of a universal thing. We know what it means to be a good person. Whether or not people follow through with that is a whole other thing, but we shouldn't need anybody to command us to know that it's not cool to go kill someone, or that it's not cool to take things from other people that don't belong to us. Obviously, I know our Viking ancestors, went out and viked and stuff, but back then it was a lot more of a necessity than it was not, because they didn't have the things we have or access to the things we have. I also know that the AFA is forward facing, and as a forward facing faith, that means we also follow the laws of the land we live in. So if something you want to do breaks the law, don't do it. It's probably not good for you. It's definitely not good for your reputation or for the way people will know you. And if people know you as a bad person, then that sort of makes you a bad person, at least in the eyes of the people you want to see you as not a bad person. And like, we want to matter, and we want our names to be remembered when we die. And would you rather your name be remembered because you did stupid stuff and were bad, or would you like your name to be remembered because you were awesome and did great things for our folk?
I think that's a really important point, and it's a point of contention I have with a lot of the faith community, and specifically, I've heard a lot of Christian faith leaders propose that their religion is the only thing that would help mankind know the difference between right and wrong. And I think that I would like to I would like to, and it'd be a cool selling point to say that, you know, you need Asatru or else you have to be a terrible person. But I think that human experience and common sense tells us that's not the case. I think Asatru does a lot to maximize being a good person, but on basic things, we have an inborn sense of right and wrong. And specifically us as a folk have an inborn nobility to recognize good and bad behavior. And unfortunately, and you know, Katie brought this up a little bit too with the different historical situations. Context is everything. And what may have been a good thing to do in 750 is not necessarily a good thing to do in 2022. It's the challenge of our folk to be able to use wisdom to pick the right action in the right time. That's so much of the rune Raido, which is the rune of our priesthood, is the right action at the right time. There's much in Asatru to teach you how to be a good person. And, you know, I'd say there's much in Christianity that goes beyond, you know, just 10 commandments that teaches you a way of living. Certainly in Asatru, the example of our ancestors, the wisdom of our Gothar and our leaders, the counseling of our Gothar and leaders, and thousands of years of our history inform us very well on actions that are noble-hearted and actions that aren't. And Asatru does a good job in emphasizing those because the values are eternal, whereas the actions, you know, have a lot of situation to them. But because Asatru is a traditional faith, that tradition, these values have been eternal since the dawn of our folk and will continue into the future. It's a matter of interpreting the situation and how to enact those in the situation that we're in. Sarah asks, Katie, how do you balance being a mom, wife, and Gythia?
I'm not sure that I do. That's definitely been the hardest part of becoming a Gythia. I went through my training right after my son was born, and I was breastfeeding, and every time I tried to read anything that I was supposed to read, and there was a lot of reading, I would fall asleep. But I managed to make it through, and I am grateful and honored to be able to be a Gythia, but trying to balance the time. I think it's harder too because with Cliff also being a Gothi and a Witten member, our time is pulled in so many different directions, and sometimes we just have to say, no, we're not going to do that thing for the AFA right now. We're going to spend some time with our kids, but at the same time, sometimes we have to say, no, we can't spend time with our kids because we've got a phone call we have to make. And it can be hard, but luckily our kids are young and they're resilient and they get over things really fast. They don't really care sometimes that we're not in the room with them because they're doing their own thing. But it's worth it for me for two reasons. It's worth it for me because I have never wanted anything really more than I've ever wanted to be a Gythia. I mean, I wanted, outside of my family, I've always wanted to be a Gythia. I've always wanted to be somebody who could be there to help my folk. Even when I was Theodish, I was trying to do the same thing, but it was a lot harder to make that happen. So when I got the opportunity, I took it, and I won't ever regret it. But I'm also doing it because I want my children to grow up in a house where Asatru is everything. And so far they are, and they're seeing me and my husband putting in all of this work to make our church better for them. And I'm hoping that our passion for it will rub off on them and that they will one day grow up to also want to be Gothar for our folk. Or if not Gothar, at least some other sort of leadership for our folk.
I really like the last part of what you said specifically. And I think oftentimes a false paradigm is created where people, you know, ask what's more important, your family or your faith, or your marriage or your children, or your work as a Gythia, or some other aspect of your life. And I think the goal for all of us should be to make the different aspects of our life synergize. Yeah, there's only 24 hours in the day, and necessarily if you're doing one thing, you can't be doing another thing at the same time. Well, some of us multitask better than others, I suppose. But in the big picture, the work you do for your family should be congruent with the work you do for your faith. The work you do for the Asatru Folk Assembly should be work that involves your family. I find the more that you get every aspect of your life to connect and to synergize and to literally be wholesome, the better things work out. And that's certainly how it's been in my life. Katie, can you speak on winter nights and what everyone, especially the women, can look forward to?
Winter nights is awesome. We haven't really thought about this one. Sorry. Winter nights is always my favorite. Some of it is because I'm in charge of helping to run it, and so I'm kind of partial to it. I've always, as a woman, had a strong connection to the Desir and to the feminine aspect of things. And so this is a really, really good time for our women to bond over something more than just the regular. Not that the regular spiritual stuff isn't awesome. The regular spiritual stuff is awesome, but this is a very female-centric holiday and a very female-centric ritual. And that can be really special for a lot of women because a lot of women don't necessarily have access to that. We focus a lot of our energy towards the masculine side of things, and that's not bad. I'm not trying to downplay that. I'm just trying to ramp up the idea that winter nights is awesome because we get to be really feminine. And yeah, we have the Desir bloat, which I will be running. Can't tell you much about that because there's not much to tell. It's a ritual to the Desir. You have to show up if you want to know more. But we also have our women's group, which is one of my favorite things. We started the women's group a couple years ago, and I've made it a mission of mine to make sure that there's a women's group at as many of our national gatherings as possible, because it is a chance for our women to get together in a room with no men and talk or learn or bond or all of those things. So you can look forward to that. I know if you have children, we're going to be having a lot of amazing children's things. There will be a costume thing going on for the kids since it's so close to Halloween. I know that a couple of our folk are going to be coming wearing some of their authentic German garb, and they have invited all of our folk to bring and wear theirs if they have it on Saturday, because I think they're trying to put together like an impromptu photo op for them. They have children, so lots of little children running around in drindles and the boy ones that I can't remember the name of right now. Yeah, those Lederhosen. Seeing a bunch of little kids like 5 and under wearing those will be pretty awesome, because who doesn't want to watch little kids running around in those things? So that's going to happen. I mean, there's a lot. If you want to know more about winter nights, you should show up. It's going to be amazing.
Solid advice. Everybody, you guys should all come to winter nights in Ohio. And what weekend in October is that, Katie?
The weekend of the 13th and 14th. I know it's that weekend. I just don't know which one is Saturday.
Excellent. All right. Well, Nick's on it. He's got it at the bottom of the screen already. Allie asks, Gythia, is there any possibility of a doula program at some point in the future? I would love to have Asatru guidance and involvement in future births.
There's always a possibility for that in the future. I know we don't have one right now. There are only 4 Gythias, and none of us are particularly doula certified in any way, but we have lots of members who are interested in it. And we can, if there are women who need help of that nature, we can certainly find somebody who can help you in the AFA. But it's definitely an idea for something to do moving forward.
Yeah, I just to chime in on that, I would love to see that if that develops. There's got to be a certain amount of organic growth to that. But if we have some ladies who are certified and skilled in that, I'd love to see that happen at some point. I'm not there yet, but that's definitely something that would be nice. Katla asks, Katie, do you feel that your previous practice of magic has enhanced your practices as a Gythia and Asatru?
I'm going to go with yes. For many years, I was, like I said before, I bounced around. I did the Wiccan thing for a little while. That never suited. And when I was just randomly pagan, I didn't have any rules about what I could or couldn't do, because I didn't really believe in the whole white magic, black magic, evil, not evil. I believed that energy is energy. And so I was able to really explore that and explore the magic side of things. I was lucky enough to have friends in my life at the time who were very magically inclined and very gifted, and they helped me a lot. Before I knew what Sade was, I was basically doing Sade. My friends were doing it with me. I don't think we had a particular name for it. And now that I'm Asatru and I have a better path for that, I think it did help me a lot. Yeah, because I wasn't held back by the idea that I had to do things a certain way. I didn't have to do them the way some book about ancient things told me I had to do them, and I wasn't held back by the Wiccan ideas that all fluffy bunny Wiccans have, the fluffy bunny stuff. I don't know. I never cared for that very much. That's why Wiccan didn't last very long. But yeah, I do. I think it helped a lot.
Pam asks, how important do you feel the female role is in Asatru?
I can answer this one. I feel like the female role in Asatru is extremely important and super underrated. There's the first part of the whole men can't do it without women. We are partners in this. We are pairs, and that's just the way it is. You can't make children without both the male and the female. You can't raise families properly without both the male and the female. We do what we have to do, but yeah, something that isn't often talked about, but that I bring up as often as I can, is the role of the frith weaver. Women are inherently magical. It's just in our blood, so to speak. And we have the ability, whether it's practiced or natural or both, to control the energy around people. And when I say that, I mean, if you have somebody who's around you who's really anxious about something or really worked up about something, sometimes a woman walking up and just putting a hand on their back or on their arm and patting it gently and saying, hey, how are you doing? How's it going? Is enough to calm that person down. Not always, but it can be. And as a frith weaver, if you know how to work that energy, you can really control that mood in a room and help just prevent things from escalating in a bad way. And I think that's really important. I can't remember. I think it was in Beowulf. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've looked it up. But there's actual evidence of this written in some of our lore about the Lady of the Hall walking around the people who were being frithful, but only because they were in a hall and they had to be like enemies who were getting along for the sake of the hall. And she was able to weave through the room and can help smooth things out. That's a real thing. Another thing that women do that men can't do is if you're in a high stumble. The man can carry the horn around the circle, but that's really, it's supposed to be the woman. A woman is supposed to carry a horn around and stumble. And the reason why that's so important is because a woman is frithful and men are chaotic by nature. Their energies are very masculine and very martial, which is a word I used earlier. It just means they're the warriors. They're martial. And because of that, it means that their energy is very different. I say chaotic. Chaotic isn't probably the right word. It's just the word I have right now. And a woman hands the man a horn, and when she takes it back, her energy and her frith basically wipes that negative, not negative, it's not negative, but that chaotic energy out and makes the horn frithful again, so that when she hands it to the next person, she's handing them a frithful horn. And that's one of our most important things that women do. And it's one of the reasons why our Gythias do it, but it's also one of the reasons why I always try to make sure that a non-Gythia does third round during Sumble, because it's one of our most important roles. It's one of the best ways I have of excuse me, of honoring a woman for going above and beyond when she doesn't have to, for hard work, for helping set up an event, or just hard work in her district in general. Yeah, that's what I got.
Because there wasn't a name attached on the question, I'm going to go throw in my 2 cents here also. What Katie said about the group dynamic is so essential and has always been essential to our folk. And we see it in mundane life as well, but it was raised to a level of sacrality with our ancestors. Women have the ability to create peace and to build frith. They also have the ability to destroy those things. And I think we've all seen that. When women want to help everybody get along, they have an amazing power to do that. And when women want to stir strife behind the scenes, they also have an amazing power to do that. There's been a number of, I worked as a bouncer in bars for a long time. There's been a number of guys that have ended up getting fights with me because their girlfriend, prompted them into it. And they've literally mouthed to me, I'm sorry, I don't want to do this right before they came at me. So it's an important thing that women have that power for good or for ill. In a room full of people, if you have a man that's uncomfortable or lacks confidence, if our women show him deference, it builds his stature and builds his confidence in a really important way. Whereas, if you have somebody that's full of themselves, but the women don't pay them attention, it diminishes that. Women have a tremendous power to do social selection and social engineering in the hall and in our society in general, and it's very important. All of that is just the group dynamic aspect. When we talk about women being involved in our ritual function, our ancestors always believed that the women connected to the other world, be that to the divine, to the ancestors across the veil, in a very special way that men were not built the same way to do. So having our Gythias be able to charge the horn and engage in a lot of metaphysical practice with the AFA is a huge asset. I think having balance is really important, but I've never been one and I will never be one to stack the deck in such a way that I think, we need to balance things without merit. So we're really blessed that right now, so many women in the AFA have risen to positions of authority within the AFA that are worthy and capable. We've got amazing Gythias, and I'm very proud to have them with us. Looking at some other stuff here, I believe Katie is away for a moment, so seems like there she's back. I was going to say you guys got a lot of questions for Katie and not as many for me to sort through. Now's also a decent time to plug Entropy. It's back up, it's working, and you guys can go there if you feel so inclined to give us a tip, or if you want to engage in the super chats. We get a lot of questions back up. If you want me to ask yours next with a little donation in that super chat section, we'll get yours asked quickly. Please don't feel obligated. I would love to answer all your questions for free, and I'll stay on here as late tonight as I need to make sure all those questions get answered. But it's a fun thing, and it gives us, a few ducats here and there to further the cause, and we appreciate it very much. Heather asks, Gythia Catie, what are some of the Asatru things you do with your kids at home?
I'm glad you brought that up. Since my children are like the most important things in my life, this is something that's very important to me, and I hope that a lot of women can also take something from this. I'm going to say the most important thing that we do is we read to them. We read to them every night. We take turns reading to each child. Like I read to Alice while he's reading to Owen. And we read to them Delairs and we read to them Children of Odin. Those are our two favorites. We'll probably invest in some more now that we've got a couple of other recommendations from some of our fellow Godar, but those are our favorite. And the reason why reading to them every day, reading our lore to them is so important is because it introduces our gods to them. And we don't tell them that they're stories. We tell them that we're reading them stories about our gods and our gods are real. So to them, the stories are real. And it's so important. My son Owen asks so many questions about Thor, who's his current favorite, but he's okay with Odin. He asks questions constantly, all the time, questions that you wouldn't even think about. And I couldn't even begin to tell you what the questions are right now because I brought it up, and so obviously I can't think of them, but also because they're the kinds of questions a 4-year-old asks, but they're so much more insightful than you would think they are. And we answer them. And when we don't know an answer to the question properly, I remember saying that we make something up at the Njord Talk dedication when I was in the leadership panel, but we don't really make up the answer. We find an answer that best fits the question. So it's not necessarily the most straightforward answer or the most accurate answer to the question, but it's a good enough answer that Owen is usually satisfied. Another thing that we do every day with him is we do our meal blessings, usually just at dinner because my husband is usually gone for breakfast, and it's usually they eat when they tell me they're ready to eat, so it can be scattered. It's not always at the same time, but we always do our meal blessings at dinner, and sometimes we follow the traditional Thor's Hammer version where you choose the 4 gods, any 4 gods you want, Odin, Balder, Freyr, Njord, and we bless this food, that kind of thing. We do that often, pretty much all the time, because my son prefers that one. But I also really like the blessing from Alan Turnage that they use at Thor's Hof. I know that I can get it for everybody. I sent it to our friend Nick earlier, and then promptly closed it, so I don't have access to it right now. But it's really neat.
Nick's on it.
There it is. We bless this food to might and main, our bodies' needs to fill, to keep us hearty, whole, and hale, so that we may work our will. Ancestors guide us, walk beside us, help us in our needs. Keep us on a path that is true, because we are our deeds. Hail the gods. I really like that one personally. I think some of it is because I grew up Catholic, and we always, we said, we held hands and said grace, and I like the routine of something like that. It's very regular and it's very easy to remember, and I don't know, I like it. But my son prefers the traditional one, so that's what we do most of the time. And it's really cute because now my son, he gets really shy for some reason when we're doing it. He'll tell me he wants to bless the meal, but then he'll say he only wants to bless the meal to Thor. And then Daddy has to say it, but he's going to say the Thor part. And it gets complicated, but he's interested and he's learning about it. And every once in a while, he'll stand up and he'll be like, in the name of Thor, hail. And that's his meal blessing. And I'm okay with it because he's actively engaging and actively trying to do what we're doing. My daughter now says, hail, eat, which means the food is blessed, time to eat. But we do it every night, and they're learning and they're trying to be a part of it. And that's really important because the more every day you can make it, the better. Other things that we do is try and find associations in everyday life. So the most common one is when it rains and there's thunder, that's Thor beating up the Jotuns. So we say, hail Thor whenever we hear thunder. Or if we see 2 crows, because we don't really have ravens where I live, we see 2 crows, we say, oh, do you think those are Odin's crows? Do you think they're watching us? We know they're not Odin's crows, or they're probably not Odin's crows. But if my son looks at crows and thinks of Odin, and every time he looks at crows, he thinks of Odin, that means that the gods are now part of his life every day, or at least every time he sees crows. The same thing can be said for a cat. If you see a cat run across the street while you're driving, oh, do you think that's one of Freya's cats? Or just anything like that. Anytime you can find a little association every day that brings Asatru to your children, that's what I work on. We also do little mini bloats, and I say mini bloats because they are always very short and they never follow any particular rules because my children are involved, and anybody with little children knows how easy it is for things to veer off course drastically and quickly. So we do mini bloats pretty much anytime my son asks, which is getting to be about once a week now. And he loves doing stumble. One of my greatest joys is when he raises his horn to Terry Rumpf as his ancestor in the ancestor round. My son met Terry Rumpf one time at Ostara when he was 2, or just shy of 2. And they sat on a bench and played for like half an hour and had a grand old time. And it was the only time they ever met. And my son remembers him by name and calls him his ancestor. And he talks about him every once in a while. But every time we do ancestor round, when we do our little mini stumbles with his little kid horn full of pink lemonade, he hails Terry Rump. And that's amazing to me because he's remembering one of our folk who was passed on, and hopefully he'll be hailing Terry Rumpf all his life. But yeah, I had a couple other things that I can't think of right now. But those are the main things we do to try and make Asatru every day for our kids.
Republic of Vinland asked, what do you guys think about the community around the Wisdom of Odin YouTube channel? Katie, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sorry, I am unfamiliar with it, so I have no thoughts on it.
You know, I don't have any thoughts on it as well. I was unaware there was a community built around that channel. I know that channel exists. Periodically, folks on here ask me to reflect on it. Anything I've heard about it's been anecdotal. I've never listened to it myself, so I really don't have anything to offer on that. But Corey asks, what is a sumbel? And Katie, would you like to explain what a sumbel is?
Sure. Excuse me. Sumbel is a community ritual where we share frith, and in 3 rounds we pass a horn around and we hail our gods first, our ancestors or our fallen heroes second, and then our community third. It sounds simple, but it can be very, very charged. There's a lot of energy and a lot of intention that goes into the horn when we share it, and it's a very super powerful community building thing, because when you're doing sumbel, you are hearing people talk about things that they care about passionately, people they care about passionately, and things that make them emotional. And I have found myself crying during the ancestor round in particular. I find myself crying when other people speak often, because they're putting so much of their energy and so much of their emotion out there when they speak. So you really get to know people and bond with them during sumbel, and that's probably the most powerful thing about it to me.
Yeah, sumbel is one of the most beautiful things we do. When we share that horn and tell our stories and open our hearts to the folk we're in that circle with, depends how much you want to give of yourself. Some people, have very brief or very uninvolved toasts, and that's fine. But some other people really, really unload their heart in their toasts, and it brings us all so much closer together. Kingdom of Vinland asked, does the AFA use the 9 noble virtues? Absolutely, we use the 9 noble virtues. Those are amazing things and a very, very important part of Asatru. We also honor the 10th noble virtue, which is victory. Finn Wraith asks, but couldn't one point be that Asatru can be a good way to find purpose in life? I'm not sure what this is a follow-up to, but certainly Asatru is an amazing way to find purpose in life. I can speak for myself. Asatru is the way that I found purpose in my life, and I am very blessed for it. Brandy asks, for both the Alsherjargothi and Gythia Erickson, how has your relationship with the gods and goddesses of our folk evolved over time? Go ahead and go first, Katie.
Sure. In the beginning, when I first came out of Catholicism, I was still Catholic. I just didn't know it. I didn't really internalize or have a really good conception of the idea of paganism, as in we have these other deities who are real separate individuals. I had a spiritual connection to it, but it takes years sometimes to overcome the ingrained monotheistic mindset that most of us grow up with. And I was only 12, so my ability to comprehend those things was probably limited by the fact that I wasn't mature yet. And I don't mean necessarily mature in like my attitude. I mean physically and mentally and all of that stuff. I hadn't grown up yet. I didn't know enough. So it took me a while. But when I became Theodish, even before that, I didn't really have a particular pantheon that I was super close to, but I know that at one point when my cat died, I know that sounds stupid, but I kind of found Freya because cats go with Freya, and that just made sense to me, and I found comfort in that, and through Freya I found Asatru in the form of Theodism. But Theodism had a very, very Catholic approach to things too, in that everybody stood in a circle around our high Gothi who would do ritual, oftentimes not in English. So you never really had a super strong connection to what was going on. So we had to find that on our own. And that's kind of hard to do sometimes, finding those connections on your own, because sometimes you don't know where to look, and there's a lot of very misleading information out there. More now than there was when I was doing all of this, because the pagan books were usually limited to like Silver Ravenwolf and whoever else, white woman with an Indian name. There was losing my train of thought because I got distracted by white women with Indian names. I'm sorry. My relationship with the gods has changed a lot over time. I think it started off weak because I didn't really understand them. There was a period where I was super strong in my faith with them before I became Theodish, because I had grown up a little bit and I had discovered a lot of things on my own. I went through a regression sometime around the time I came out of Theodism, because a lot of things in my life sort of crashed and burned, and I couldn't figure my way out of it. And so I won't say I lost faith. I never lost faith, but I stepped away from faith in honor of other things. In honor of, that's the wrong term too. But I stepped sort of back from things, and I lost that connection I had to things. And then I found the AFA, and suddenly everything clicked back into place. And I really do believe that being surrounded by so many people who really believe what I believe, and who practice what they preach instead of just preaching it, has made it much easier for me to find that connection again and to really understand it. But it also helps that I can talk to people who know our gods, because I don't think any of us can ever really know our gods. We can know of them and we can know a lot about them, but they are bigger than us, and that makes it hard to properly understand them all the way, if that makes any sense. But through the community of people that I have in the AFA, I've learned them better, because everybody has a different understanding, and all of the different understandings come together and create sort of like a clearer understanding. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if that really answered the question, but that's what I got.
No, that was great. Something that you said that's also affected how my relationship with the gods has grown. I think that just like any of the friendships in our lives, or even our relationships with our own parents, evolves over time as we mature and as we enter different stages in our life. Where I was when I was 20 and I found the gods, my life's gone a very different direction now. I have a wife, I have a daughter, I'm the Alsherjargothi of the AFA. And as these different things change in our lives, the nature of, or the depth of our relationships with everything and everyone we care about evolves. I would also say that one of the most profound things that has developed in my relationship with our gods is being able to worship them at their hofs. You connect, at least I connect with our gods in a very different way after I'm at one of their temples, in their presence, connected in that way, and giving gifts to them in that way. The learning the lore about our gods is the very entry level of understanding them, and it's important to do, and it's valuable. But developing that faith, developing that relationship over time, that's the very essence of what Asatru is about. And I've been really fortunate to connect with our gods on a very deep level, I feel, and it's very blessed to have been able to develop those relationships. Cellar Door. What is the AFA's position on the gods? Were they ever flesh? Did they ever have, did they have fathers? And are people living today literally related to them? So that there is no confusion, and completely unequivocally, our gods are real. They're absolutely real, and they're absolutely gods. In the AFA, we have no belief that our gods are somehow super evolved humans that attained godhood. While I do think that people can ascend to things higher than themselves, the great gods of Aryan consciousness are gods with a big G, in the biggest sense of the word gods. And to break them down to being just big people is a great disservice. No, our gods are absolutely gods. They're not ideas. They're not merely archetypes. They are gods. As far as how one god begets another god, the closest thing we have to understand that is describing it as parentage. It's all we really have to go on. So I don't think that's wrong to say. But do they have fathers? Clearly, some of our gods have gods that predate them, that brought them into existence. And in that sense, absolutely they do. And I think that goes to the next portion of your question. Are people living today literally related to them? At first, yes, absolutely. They are our oldest ancestor. But I don't think that is because of, a physical copulation. I think that the very essence of our soul emanates from them. Our lore talks about when Odin, Vili, and Ve literally would breathe life and blood and peopleness into our ancestors. Our gods made us who we are, and the genetics and the blood and the breath of life that they breathed into us and imbued us with has carried on through the successive generations to this very day. And in that sense, they are very literally our oldest ancestors. King of Cheese. Can't get over that screen name. It's probably my favorite screen name that we get on here. Matt and Katie. coming in with my extremely question, how are the two of you doing tonight? Well, I hope. How are you doing, Catie?
I'm doing pretty good. I can't complain. Having fun sitting here talking to all of you people.
Gotta say, Tony, I am doing pretty good myself. I love doing these. I look forward to them. I was, doing something important last week, but I was sad I missed it. I'm glad to be back with you guys. How are you doing, Tony? I hope that you're doing well, and I'm very glad that you're with us. You're one of our most devoted fans on these. I'm not sure if you've missed one yet. Daniel, the Desir song is great. How important do you find music to be when it comes to spiritual practice? Catie, what are your thoughts?
I wish we had more music that was ours, and that's actually a side project that I am working on very slowly, is creating more devotional songs for us for the AFA that we don't have anywhere else, because I know there are songs out there and there is music out there that can either be used by us or that can be adapted to suit us, but I don't want that. I want us to have our own music. It's one of the reasons why I created the Dear Seer song, because I was struck with the inspiration, and so I did it, and also because it's very important. I love our Hair Your Father song that we use during Mass Odin bloats. I sing that to myself sometimes, and I try to focus or meditate, or if I'm going to do like a room draw or something, I might do that to sort of center myself. But yeah, I think music is super important, and I can't wait until we have mountains of our own.
Yeah, music is fantastic. I wish that we had more amazing, overtly spiritual Asatru music. We talked about that a little bit before on the broadcast, but I really wish that we had more music. I think it's great. I think music in the form of chants is fantastic. I agree with you. The Desir song is beautiful. Even if the music is just a simple drum beat, I always try to incorporate that in my rituals, because I think that sound matters a lot, and it's a really good tool for focus. But yeah, I would love to see more of that develop as time goes on. Vril Vanier asks, all modern religions have their specific holy book that they reference and study amongst themselves. Are there any plans to have an AFA specific holy book written in the future? So yes and no. I think that developing a collection of things that we want AFA members to be familiar with and to read is important. I think, having something that talks about our history is important. And I don't mean ancient Viking history. That's certainly important, but I mean our history as modern Asatru are, the history of the Asatru Folk Assembly. So we're working on developing those type of things. Having explanations for our heroes that we honor in the AFA and for the reasons that we do ritual the way that we do, I think is very important. But I don't think that all modern faiths have their holy book. I think that all Semitic faiths tend to have their holy book. But one thing that makes us very different is that we are not beholden to the letter of a certain book. One thing with indigenous faiths, many of which are older and are ancient, is the accumulated knowledge of the folk knowledge and folk traditions that are passed down through books, yes, but orally and through other things, all accumulate the huge tapestry that makes up our faith. When we get too overly literal and obsessed with a book, it's just fundamentally not what our faith is about. None of our sources of lore are that literal or rigid to where every letter of them was inspired by, one of our gods. That's never been a claim that any of our folk have made. Our gods guide us through a myriad ways over time and over space to lead us to where they want us to be. And the accumulation of that knowledge isn't as clean as, you know, here's our Bible. Unfortunately, or maybe not unfortunately, but not sure the best way to put it, it just isn't that way, but it do. Katla, Katie, you say women are naturals with magic and the horn has to be cleansed from masculine energy by a woman. What do you think of men being Gothi then? Are they the exception to the rule?
I was speaking specifically in terms of Sumbul. Sumbul is, so when you read Beowulf or some of our older sagas, you read stories about Sumbul, and you read about how, think of the Althing that they used to have. Althing was a time when everybody from every clan got together, and they had to get along in a space where normally they might fight each other to the death or have bicker or whatever. So during Sumbul, which you would have these big gatherings where you had all of your people together, even when they weren't always the best of friends, to have a woman who is frithful and sort of help cleanse the horn of that negative, not, I keep saying negative, it's not negative energy, just that masculine energy. It's a twofold thing. For one, it takes the sort of jumbled, chaotic energy of the man and it calms it, but it also helps to calm the man who you are taking the horn from and giving the horn to, because of that natural energy. It's a thing that women are inherently good at because we can manipulate energy and frith. It's why we can do save, and it's why men can't. Men have different energy. They are men. They fulfill a different role. They are naturally more chaotic. And it's redundant to keep saying that, but it just is what it is. Their energy is very different, and so they serve a different role. It goes back to what I said in the beginning. Men and women are not the same. We serve different roles, but we need to work together for the whole because we're partners in everything we're doing. Our Gothis do a wonderful job at everything that they do. They perform ritual, they hold the horn. But during Sumbul, when you're doing a high Sumbul in particular at a national gathering where you have so many different people from so many different places with so many different relationships to each other, it's always wise to have a woman who can take the horn and give the horn to our people, because it helps just keep the frith and to maintain that frith.
Let me interject for a second to squash Katie's sexist anti-male heresy. No, I kid. I think that I just want to add a little bit to what Katie said. We're very different. I wouldn't describe the male energy as chaotic, but I would describe it as inherently aggressive and assertive in a way that a woman's energy isn't. One of the things that I honestly think is beautiful to hear Katie describe, and I don't know how to communicate this well, but the fact that she doesn't best know how to explain male energy is because she is whole and complete as a woman, and it doesn't occur to her because our Gythias are so steeped in their femininity that's just a strange diversion. Male and female energy comes across really differently, and in our lore and traditionally, women are very good conduits of energy. They're very good receivers in a more passive way of absorbing and then distributing energy, whereas men inflict our will on things, and we're much better at directing a ritual in an assertive way, or it just becomes different. And I don't think that one of them is necessarily superior to the other in its ritual efficacy, but it is different. You see a lot of our magical practice, especially runic practice, tends to specifically favor men in that practice. It's much more about inflicting our will, and I don't think inflict is the right word, but inserting our will into the world or into things, and like breaking something down and shaping it according to will. Whereas a female's energy is much more about receiving communication, about receiving things and being and transmitting things from the other side, and about bestowing power and bestowing energy, bestowing authority. Women were always very important in the establishment of a new ruler. They would very often be the ones to, place a crown on someone's head or give that preferential draught of mead to a chieftain. And their act of doing that bestows that mantle, bestows that power upon the man that they give that to. So they're just two very different ways of approaching spirituality, and we're very fortunate that we have both of those active in the AFA. Lawrence Forbes with 10 Canadian dollars. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. He says, great answer to the holy book question. No book is holy. Judeo-Christians think theirs is, but no, the gods and goddesses are holy, and perhaps we are. Again, thank you very much for your donation. Anybody who wants to get their question moved to the front of the line or just wants to throw a few dollars our way, please go to our Entropy link. Michelle asks, Matt and Katie, how do you incorporate the Asatru faith within your marriages? Katie?
So daily, most of our focus is on our children, not on ourselves or each other. I think because we are so involved in the AFA and so involved in raising our children to be Asatru, it just sort of is there. I don't know if that makes any sense, but we don't do anything super out of the way for our marriage as far as Asatru goes, because our whole lives are Asatru. So it's just there.
Katie stole my answer. So I'm going to be completely honest. I really wish that I could say there was, some big ritual hoodoo that we do all the time as a family. And it's much more subtle than that. I found my wife through the AFA. So we were both Asatru coming into the relationship. And I think that makes a lot of things very natural that way. As opposed to, a lot of ritual work together. So much of what Mandy and I do is AFA related together. I know she's very, very active with our women, and she talks to me about that. And we talk through different things going on within the AFA. I'm constantly coming to her with in need of counsel about a different situation or wondering her perspective on an email or something I've written up or an interaction I'm having with a member of the AFA leadership, or maybe a situation within counseling. And so Asatru is always there in our life, but it's not so much made a big production about because it's such a natural course of what we do as people. And it's the very foundation of what our relationship is based on. So I think that's probably different for different people, depending on when they came to Asatru and their lives in general. Katie, your husband asks, hi, Katie. Have you ever had family or friends reject you for being Asatru? How'd you handle that, and how did it play out long term?
Not specifically for being Asatru. I've lost many friendships for being in the AFA.
They're the same thing.
Yeah, it's not about the faith so much. I believed in our gods when I was Theodish, and that did not that did not lose me my friends. My mom has always been a little concerned. She's very Catholic. She doesn't understand what I'm doing, but she has long since accepted the fact that I'm doing it. She can't stop me. Um, she's even been to some of our events. She came down for the dedication of Thorshoff when we named my daughter Alice, and she loved it. She said it was beautiful, and the people were amazing, and the church was really nice. And she never had anything bad to say except for the fact that I'm not Catholic, which is bad. So, you know, um, I definitely have had people question me for being Asatru. Um, I chose my husband and the AFA over relationships in the past, which means that I lost out on a lot of very good, very old friendships. I don't regret it for a lot of reasons, but mostly because I don't think that I mean, I was only dating my husband at the time, but we are married and have two beautiful children and a wonderful life. And I would have lost that if I had chosen to give up all of my connections to the AFA in honor of those friends. And it's hard. And um, sometimes I miss those people because they were part of my life for a very long time. But I have to look forward, and sometimes it has to be about me and what is good for me and not what is good for them. And like I said, I don't regret it because I've built a really wonderful life for myself. And I'm in a position now where I get to build a really wonderful life for my children and hopefully for many other people's children. So,
Got to say, I was really lucky. I got to be the, I guess, fifth wheel with Katie and her family at after Njordshof dedication. We all shared a B&B down there, and then I was there for an extra day with them, and they were nice enough to give me a ride to the airport. They were kind of doing a little bit longer family vacation, and it was really neat to be around them. I can tell you, somebody who knows these guys, that what they're talking about their family is absolutely the real deal, and it's neat to get time with them because they're good friends of mine, but also with their son and their daughter. It was really special to get that time with their family and just watch that, and I'm happy I got to do that. Pam says, "Gotcha, Katie. Do you have any books you recommend for women, especially newer women, to the AFA?"
sorry, apparently I was muted that whole time. Thank you, Nick, for trying to remind me 3 times before I noticed. So I was expecting that question. I had a whole list of books that I made up that gets asked every time. But I was writing in a book, like I wasn't expecting one for just a female perspective. Um, I'm looking at my bookshelf now, and I have a couple books up here of questionable authorage. So like I have one book that I like that was written by a woman named Patricia Flavel. She's definitely not one of ours. She's a uni all the way through, but her book Freya Lady Vanities was actually pretty decent. Um, you have to be careful when you're reading it just to pick out any of the clearly overtly uni stuff that might be in it, but it's about Freya, and it's one of the only books I've read it's just it's small book. It's all about Freya, and I really liked that one. I have another book. Peace Weavers and Shield Maidens, Women in Early English Society is a very good one, by Kathleen Herbert. I have I'm sorry, I'm looking looking. I had another one that I can't remember the name of. The True Hearth, a practical guide to traditional householding. Again, it's written by Chisholm, which I know we all know, James Chisholm. So it's not a horrible author, but that one's a really good one. And the last one that I have that isn't really technically a female-centered book, but that I think a lot of our women, I don't know, if they're anything like me, they're drawn to the more natural side of things, is called Elves, Wights, and Trolls. Now that's written by Kjeldolf Gunderson, who is definitely not one of our folk and is questionable in many, many ways. But that particular book of his is pretty well written. My husband could tell you more about it because he's the wordy guy. I'm just here. But those are I hear him laughing from up here. Sorry. Those would be my biggest recommendations as far as female for just basic new beginners. I could give you another list of like the more academic dry stuff because I have read them all, but that's what I got for right now.
Rachel, does the AFA have any stance on psychic ability, premonitions, the spiritual side of life, being very real in the stance of magic work? I'm gonna go ahead and strike at this first, and then pass this off to Katie because I think she's got stuff to add on it. But first, I'm trying to think of the best way to encapsulate the AFA's position on this. Yes, all of those things are real things, but they are the percentage of people who claim those things is much askew in favor of people making stuff up or people who are just silly. So one of the times in the AFA, I'd say most of our leadership don't talk about those things very often. And the reason that we don't is because so many charlatans and buffoons talk about those things like they're such a common and mundane occurrence that you feel a mixture of between silly and perhaps irreverent / disrespectful to speak about those things very openly because the well's been poisoned by so many just ridiculous individuals. There absolutely are folk with psychic abilities, with second sight, with the ability to have premonitions, with the ability to use various forms of divination. All of that, all of those things in and of themselves are very real and very powerful. Again, I am so turned off by so many of the people that make things up or are lunatics that talk about those things, that it makes it really uncomfortable to talk about sometimes. And maybe that's our fault and we should talk about it a little bit more. What are your thoughts, Katie?
So I agree 100% that there's almost like this taboo out there about talking about the magic. And I think of it, whenever I say it, I think of it with the CK, like the dumb Wiccan magic with a CK, because people make fun of you. They don't take it seriously. And I've found that even people in our circles tend to look down on those women who talk about magic and that kind of thing. A lot less now than they used to. I think they're a lot more open to it than they were 10 years ago when I was doing all this stuff. So I've always had kind of this stigma. There's always been this stigma in my head about talking about that kind of stuff. So you'll hear me, I'll always talk about it like, oh, that's spooky stuff. Oh, we're off to do spooky stuff because women do spooky stuff. Like I make fun of it while at the same time trying to legitimize it. And it's sort of a thing I do. I make fun of things. I'm self-depreciating humor and all that. But I really would like to see it become a more serious thing. I can't speak for everybody. I'm not particularly like naturally gifted at like sensing energy. I just tend to think of magic as being energy. Everything has energy. We can manipulate energy. There's all kinds of different games that I used to play when I was a kid before I knew what I was doing, where I could feel energy and manipulate it. You can see energy. The idea of auras, that is seeing energy, literally. There's one thing I wanted to bring up, and I already forgot what it was. Energy and people, and maybe, sorry, I gotta talk myself through that one. So something as far as like premonitions and stuff, I have always had what I guess you would call prophetic dreams. They're not really. I have dreams. I can remember almost every dream I've had since I was a little kid. And every once in a while, I'll dream of something. And 10 years later, 5 years later, 3 years later, I'll be in a store putting something on a conveyor belt. And I'll be like, I dreamt about this moment. I remember very specifically the dream, the context of the dream, everything that was happening in that dream. And I remember dreaming of this moment. I've had dreams of the house I'm living in now. I've had dreams of my children. I think I had a dream about my husband one time, but probably not, because I don't usually see too many faces in my dreams, which is neither here nor there. But like snatches, I've never had like hundreds of prophetic dreams, and they don't never tell me anything about my life. And in the moment when I'm dreaming them, I don't know that they're things that are going to happen, but it's little like 2 or 3 second snatches of dreams where I can remember the dream 4 years later in a moment where I had that snatch. So I believe in that stuff. I believe it's real. I believe all of it's real, and it needs to become more of a more serious thing. But like Matt said, I do believe that it's not something that is supernatural for a lot of people. Women in particular, this stuff tends to apply to more. I'm not saying that men can't have the spiritual or magical experiences or whatever, but there's a reason why women are more naturally attuned to it. It's literally, like I said, part of being a fifth mover. It's in our blood. I don't think most women are supernaturally inclined towards a lot of that stuff. It's something you have to work for. You work for it by learning how to meditate. You work for it by learning how to control your own thoughts and how to control the energy around you. And eventually all of those other things sort of come with that. But if you don't put in the work, you're not going to be one of those people who can like, oh, not that I think many people are going to do that anyway, have like visions of the future and stuff, but it does happen. Some women do have it happen. And I know a few women in the AFA who are a lot more naturally in tune with the things going on around them than myself, without the hard work that goes into it. So yeah, that's something I think we agree with Matt. We should talk about more seriously and less silly.
You know, a extension of this, because I think it runs in the same current, is people's ability to see ghosts or other kind of metaphysical manifestations of things. I've known some really, really gifted people that have been able to see things where the rest of us couldn't, and some folks that I really believe in their power. And then I know some lunatics that claim they see a lot of stuff, and I wouldn't believe them as far as I could throw them. So yeah, the picking and choosing on who you're going to listen to on that is so very important. And the credibility within the individual. That's why so often these are conversations that get had in person between two people as opposed to broadcasting to a group of people, because many of us have, seen absolutely foolish people talk about these things. We don't want to cheapen it by adding to that pile. We'd much rather express it with people that we trust or people that trust us, and talk about it in that context. It just seems to add a level of seriousness to it. Nick asks, so what about your book choices for kids or for adults in general, Katie?
He's only asking that because I sent him the book list earlier. So I'm pretty sure most of these books are books that you guys have already been recommended to. For kids, I cannot recommend enough Delaire's Book of Norse Myths. It's my go-to. It's definitely the top of my list. My son loves it. He loves the pictures. I think the pictures are kind of cheesy, but it doesn't matter what I think about him. The stories are easy to understand, super easy to read, and none of the stories are super long. So there's like one or two stories in there that are actually really long for a 4-year-old at bedtime. And then Children of Odin by Patrick Collum, also a really good one. Written in the early 1900s, like 1907 or something like that. My husband is a particular fan of that one, but I agree, I really like it. It's a little bit harder to read though if you're not familiar with reading some of the older stories, because the sentence structure is a little different, but it's still a really good one. As far as books for adults, Culture of the Teutons, cannot stress that one enough. The first 3 chapters are like the best chapters of any book I've ever read about our faith, from a older perspective. Read it. Everybody needs to read that book if you can get it, which it's not hard to get. So it used to be. Lady with a Mead Cup by Michael J. Enright. The Road to Hell by Hilda R. Ellis. That one is a particular favorite of mine. It's a little bit dry and quite a lot redundant, but the book is, it basically explains, I have the book up here somewhere. It's basically explaining the way our ancestors conceptualized death and dying and all of that stuff. It's a fantastic book. I really think everybody should read it. The Cult of Kingship in Anglo-Saxon England by William A. Cheney. That one is a little bit of a harder book to read through, and it covers, I'll find it up here. I'm sorry, I don't know. I keep looking at my bookshelf instead of just looking at the camera and talking. It covers the concept of kingship and godly kingship, or right there. Kingship as it is related to God, like from paganism to Christianity. So it covers a lot, and it's just really good. It talks about the gods of kingship, which would have traditionally been Odin, Tyr, and Freyr. Talks about the cult of Freyr a little bit in there, which I know was brought up with somebody in a different chat that I did. It's just a really, really good book to understand our ancestors' relationship with gods. Obviously, Stephen McNallen's book, Asatru, Native European Spirituality, is a fantastic book. Also, A Well in a Tree, the Well and the Tree, rather, A Lady with a Mead Cup, all of those books, really good. Really dry academic books, but for anybody who really wants to get to a deeper understanding of the culture and the way our ancestors related to the gods, is a good one. And if anybody is interested in a really good rune book for more of a beginning stance, the Runes Workbook book by Leon D. Wild. I know Matt has talked about this book. I got that book as a gift from somebody many years ago, and it's my go-to book. I love it to pieces. It's a really good one for anybody who doesn't want to get into the deeper, more complicated stuff that you would find in Thorson's stuff, which is not for beginners as a rule. That's it.
Thank you for that, Katie. One thing I wanted to make sure we got to this evening was something called the Circle of Air. For anybody who doesn't know about that, can you explain that a little bit to folks?
Sure. So we have a thing called Air's Blessings, or the Circle of Air, and it's basically our ladies will, if anybody has any kind of health issue or any kind of issue that needs healing, so it doesn't have to be health. If you're suffering from some kind of depression, we had a member who was suffering from extreme PTSD from being in the military and couldn't travel, and he asked for Air's healing for that. And I know he was able to travel at least small distances to make it to some events that some local members were having, and that was really important to him because before that he couldn't get to anything because he couldn't be in a car for more than a few minutes. We've had people reach out to us to help them with being pregnant, complications, like I said, depression, health issues. We've had people reach out to us when they are very sick, sometimes when they are dying, just for that extra oomph, I guess. But basically, we have our ladies in the AFA who are interested in participating. If you need help or healing of any kind, you let us know, and we let the ladies know, and all of the ladies in the group will perform rituals to air on your behalf. We are going to be getting back into doing a monthly ritual where all of the women try to do the ritual at the same time, kind of like they do with the Odin World Prayer Day. I can't speak. Sorry, we used to do that. It kind of fell to the wayside a little bit when the transfer from Facebook happened because it was hard to organize that stuff on Telegram and then on MeWe. But now that we are firmly ensconced on MeWe, we're going to be getting back into the regular thing. So if anybody has anything that they feel they would like energy from air from, healing from air from, you can feel free to reach out to me or to any of our other Gythias or to any of your folk builders, female folk builders. Most of them are involved. You can also email me directly, or you can email us at our Heirs Blessings Runestone email address, which I think is heirsblessings@runestone.com. For anything, reach out. Our women are very happy to do what they can to help our folk feel better in any way.
So guys, a couple of housekeeping things. First, I am coughing and clearing my throat an awful lot tonight. I appreciate you guys bearing with me and pretending you don't notice that. Also, I've had to reload Entropy a couple of times, so anybody who wants to be on there needs to log back in. I promise you it's a really cool platform. They've been really nice to work with, but we're going to look on the back end and try to figure out why it's so glitchy tonight. But it is back up and running now if you're interested. So Stephen thinks this is a simple question, but it's more complicated than you think. Simple questions. What do you enjoy most in your positions as Alsherjargothi and Gythia? And what keeps you moving forward? Katie, go ahead and take a shot at this first.
I mean, the very basic face value answer is it's really freaking awesome to name somebody's baby and to perform somebody's wedding. I had the profound joy of being able to do both. A couple weeks ago, I traveled up to New Hampshire for a couple of who live up there who wanted a baby naming, and they just happened to have their marriage certificate available because they thought they were going to go to the Justice of the Peace when they were ready. And we performed a very impromptu but very legal wedding right there on the spot, and it was super awesome. It was fun. I really love being able to do that kind of stuff. Performing ritual for folk so that we can help them connect to the gods is amazing. I love being able to do that. But on a less obvious route there, the hard stuff is, I love doing the hard stuff as much as the good stuff. The counseling people who are going through crises, people who are dying or whose relationships are falling apart or who are just having a crisis of faith. I don't love them because our folk are suffering or going through them. I love them because the greatest joy in my life, aside from my children, is to serve and help my folk. So I love being able to do that for them. And that is what moves me forward. That and my children. My children keep me moving forward because as awesome as the AFA is for us right now, imagine how much more awesome it could be in 20 years when my children are adults. And imagine how much more awesome it could be 35 years and 40 years from now when my children are having children who are being born into the AFA. That's that and helping with folk.
Yeah, so you said this is a simple question, and maybe I just overthink it, but man, I am the luckiest, most fortunate guy in the world to be Alsherjargothi of the Asatru Folk Assembly. My favorite things about it, I've been at all different levels of leadership in the AFA, but as the Alsherjargothi, I get to see the whole picture in a way that other people don't necessarily. I'm in the know on so many of our members' lives, so many of the things we have going on around the world. And I get to see all of those things. And it's beautiful and it's amazing not only to see them, but to have some part in making those happen. I also, just as a personal, inside baseball deal, it's hard at previous times where I've had things I wanted to do, but there was stoppages ahead of me in the hierarchy to where I couldn't get those things done that I desperately wanted to accomplish. And I don't have that anymore. It's a double-edged sword of, everything that we don't do that we should do is ultimately my fault, and I accept that. But I am able to do a lot of things and have an active hand in making some really special things happen. And that's a huge blessing for me. I get to travel around the country and share in ritual and stand in the circle with so many of you guys. I get to meet amazing, amazing people. And not only do I get to meet them, but being around as long as I have, I get to watch them grow and develop and watch their families grow and develop. And that's really special. As far as just, regular Gothi things, one of the most special things ever is when you get to look in somebody else's eyes and see that moment when our gods become real to them. A lot of people think our gods are real and think they believe, but there's this mind is blown moment when you know that our gods are real, and being able to be a part of that and to see that happen for someone is a very special thing. And it's absolutely my favorite thing that I get to do as a Gothi or be part of. As a side note, I watched law speaker Alan Turnage do his Balder ritual this last weekend, and I watched a person that he did that for. And it was really nice to be able to see that even from an outside perspective. Like Katie mentioned, other really, really special things certainly are baby namings and doing funerals. And again, like Katie said, it's not because it's awesome that somebody died, but they're going to die anyway. It's something nice to be able to have the honor of presiding over that last ritual for them here in Midgard, that the family, would trust me to do that, and that I get that opportunity to honor that person that's passed is very, very special. The other thing is with all these, Hofs that we're establishing, all these things that we're doing, this segues into what keeps me going on it. As a relatively new father, I get to watch my daughter experience these things, and I get to watch her grow up in a world where this is very, very alive and vibrant in a way that it wasn't when I first found it. And building that future for her is huge to me. Other things that keep me moving forward, I have a tremendous and beautiful weight on my shoulders, and I am aware of the weight of it every single day. I would never cast it off. I would never not want all of that weight on. I love feeling that weight, but I'm aware there's a weight and a responsibility, and living up to that keeps me going. Living up to that responsibility, being able to do something that in a way, really trying to think of the best way to put this, but on a personal level, when I have stress or I have things in my life that are difficult, doing this and attempting to do it well is my redemption, is my ability to ascend past things in my life, is my ability to make the world better through something that I'm doing. And I'm in a very unique spot to do that. And it means the world to me. I want to leave the most powerful legacy I can for my family, to honor my ancestors, to make my ancestors and my gods proud of me, and to set the bar ridiculously high for whoever takes over this position after me. And yeah, I am tremendously motivated all day, every day by and about that. That was probably more answer than you were looking for with the question, but I appreciate you asking it because it is something I'm very passionate about. Folk the Rude, someone at Njordshof. Thank you first. Thank you for donating the $25. That's awesome and it means a lot. It's very appreciated. Someone at Njordshof showed me several different pages / groups on MeWe that are AFA oriented. I can't find them. So first, it was great to get to meet you at Njordshof. That was fantastic. I'm glad you came down for that. Secondly, I will get that fixed. What you need to do is talk to any of your folk builders. You happen to be in a state with a bunch of them, but specifically I would advise reaching out to Tim Dumas, tdumas@runestone.org. Hopefully somebody can throw that address up for you and he can get you set up in those different MeWe groups. If not, if there's any hassle on it, please email me at mattflavel@runestone.org and I will personally get you shuffled into those groups. Don asks, do you have any recommendations for parents with younger or not so young children who encounter others who may be hostile to their beliefs or are actually curious? And Katie?
So that's a really tough one. So I know we have a member whose daughter is 11 or 12, 13 now, I think. And she has experienced a lot of bullying from her peers because of her faith. She is very Asatru by herself. Her parents are very Asatru. And from everything I've heard, she has no intention of denying her faith or pretending like it doesn't exist. But they live in a very religious area, and it's created a lot of hardship for her. And I've watched and talked to her parents about it, and I know how hard it is on all of them. And I don't know if there's really a right answer for that. The best thing I can say is do your best to raise your children naturally Asatru. And when I say naturally Asatru, I don't mean don't like force them into it. Don't try to like jam it down their throats. Not that I'm saying any of us are doing that. You have to let them find Asatru in a natural way. Kind of like when I was talking about, hail Thor when it thunders and oh look, there's Odin when you see crows. If you make it so naturally a part of who they are and what they do every day, then there is less conflict on their own personal level with what they believe. And if there's less conflict in their own personal lives about what they believe in, then it's going to be easier for them to brush off people who don't understand. Because if there's any confusion for them in what they believe or in what we're doing, then it's going to create confusion when it comes from outside of that. It's never going to be easy to watch our kids have issues with other kids or even adults, because sometimes the adults are as mean to your children as the kids about what they believe in. It's never going to be easy. There's no real right answer for that. except for just to make sure you're doing everything you can to teach your kids what Asatru is. As far as answering questions for the people who are curious, if they are 100% Asatru because it's what they firmly believe, because it's all they've ever known, then answering some of those questions shouldn't be too hard. Hopefully the adults who are asking the questions, or the kids who are asking the questions, but mostly the adults, they're respectful enough not to do it when you're not around, but we can't always control that. Yeah, I'm sorry. I wish I had a better answer for you on that one. I don't think there's an easy question or an easy answer to that, because people are bullies and kids are the worst of all sometimes.
It's hard. That question is so very dependent upon the circumstance, dependent upon the child, dependent on so many different factors. But I think instilling the courage in your children early on for them to be proud of being Asatru, even when under fire for it, is going to make them much better equipped as adults to not break when something doesn't go their way, for them to have that pride and have that pride reinforced at home. That's an example to all of us. I think that's a powerful example to our adults as well. So some of the kids going through that, unfortunately, hopefully that strengthens them in their resolve so that they can live Asatru as adults with pride and with their head up. Question. I ordered a Stephen McNallen book a while ago from the site. How long does it take to be shipped and delivered? Well, that depends. So first, that's on me. I can try to check and see what the status is. And if it continues to be a problem, please email me and I'll get you sorted out. I'll get it all straight. I have to run those to the post office, and I do my best to do that at least once a week. Trouble is, with all of my traveling, I was literally home for one day last week, so that didn't happen. So I'm looking to get a whole bunch of things shipped out this week. But like I said, it usually takes, within that first week for me to get it shipped out, and then however long the postman takes to get it to you. But if it doesn't show up, please let me know and we'll get you all sorted out. And I apologize for any delay. So Sierra, it's not really a question, but Nick put it in my questions section. So she's very excited to see you, Katie. She says, Katie, with like 6 exclamation points. It's a lot of exclamation points. Sierra asks, what is your favorite memory during your time in the AFA, Gythia Catie?
First of all, Sierra, I don't, you're going to have to give me a minute. I have a lot of really, really good memories. One of the favorite things was Mandy's face when she walked into the amphitheater room at the camp we were holding winter nights at previously, and realized she was getting a surprise baby shower. Because I know she had worried. She didn't really have a whole lot of friends in not Arizona, you guys live in Nevada, but you guys had just moved there, so you didn't know anybody, and she was about to have a baby, and she was so excited, but also kind of depressed because she didn't really know anybody, and she couldn't have a baby shower. And then there she was having a baby shower, and I think she legit straight up cried, which is not something Mandy does very often, if you know Mandy. But I think she probably cries more than she likes to admit, but I shouldn't throw her under the bus when she's not here, right? But little things like that, watching people's faces when they experience those moments of joy that they're not expecting to have. We get those when you see people for the first time in a year, that's an amazing experience. Here's one. Ravenna, Swan's daughter. When my son was 5 or 6 months old, he was lying on the floor on some blankets in the camp main hall, and Ravenna was sitting there telling him to roll over, and he did it. He rolled over for her. It was 2 months after that before I got him to roll over for me, but he did it for Ravenna. And that's one of my favorite memories only because every time we go to an event, Owens, is Ravenna there? Is Ravenna there? Is Ravenna there? Except for at the dedication where he was excited to see Ravenna, but he was very sad when Eldred left because I think they're now besties. Most of just, I don't know, I lost track of myself on that one, but I couldn't give you one favorite moment. I love all of the moments. There's so many good times that I've had with my folk in the AFA. Wait, I changed my mind. I just thought of one. When at our last winter nights, we oathed in some of our new members in my kindred. That was a really good member. The Greens are very good friends of mine, and we got to oath in winter nights in front of everybody, and that was wonderful. I really liked that. Yeah. Oh, I have another one. I'm sorry. Cliff proposed to me at winter nights one year in the middle of Stumble, and I remember specifically one or two people screeching so loud. I have no idea what he said to me when he proposed, by the way. As soon as he dropped on one knee, everybody was like, and I still have no idea what he said to me when he proposed. But, that was a pretty good one. I like that one too. I'm done for real.
That's okay. I was there for that, and it was really special. And yeah, I was not one of the screechers, but I was very, very happy for you guys. James asked, is the price point the main factor in not recommending books from Stephen Pollington? Yes, but maybe not in the way that you think. I think the price point prevents so many people from getting those and being familiar with them that often we overlook recommending them. And that really is an oversight on our part. Stephen Pollington's done some amazing work on this, specifically in how Asatru is practiced by the Anglo-Saxons. I think his books are very, very good. I enjoy them. I own 3 of them. Very good work. He's an amazing scholar. Can't say enough good about. I actually got to meet him at a midsummer. I want to say 2010, 2011. We flew him out and had him at a midsummer, and that was really nice. He's a great guy. He does not like root beer. I think he's an Englishman, and I think that they're not big root beer fans over there. He thought it tasted like toothpaste. But no, Stephen Pollington's great, and I'd encourage everybody to read his books. His Mead Hall book is fantastic. His Elder Gods book is also fantastic, and I'm going to butcher the name of it because I don't have it right here in front of me, but there's one about, I believe, the English warrior. That's a very good book as well. But yeah, I think roundabout, they are very expensive, and that's unfortunate. I think they would get much, much more use if they were at a more affordable price point. But I don't begrudge him any of the profits from him. I hope it makes him rich because he does a great, great job. But I would like for more of our people to be able to read that. Matt and Katie, what is your favorite memory from the dedication? So we kind of already hit that, but Katie, what do you want to add to that?
I have 2. One was Othing Leinen. That was a very, very happy moment for me. He was not my Godar student, but I worked with him a lot, and I think he's a wonderful man, and I think he is going to be a very wonderful Gothi for our folk. So that was definitely on the top of my list of favorite moments. My other was when Stumble ended, and we were all getting up. My 2 children and one of our members' sons were all curled up in the corner on a couple pillows we had brought, and my daughter was like all passed out with her mouth open and her arms everywhere on like laying on this kid's back, and he was, it was really cute. And naturally we took plenty of pictures so that we could tease her and maybe even him in the future and be like, oh, look at this. But yeah, those are my 2 favorite memories. The whole weekend was really amazing though, and I met some really awesome people. Like all of the newer top people were pretty awesome.
The little kid nap time snuggle pile was very cute. Very cute. Trying to think of what, in additional to what I mentioned earlier. I think this is obvious, but it warrants saying. I was working behind the scenes for so long on getting Njordshof to happen that just going there and seeing it and taking it in person was very special. I'd looked at the property on pictures and whatever else before we purchased it, but really getting a sense of it and walking the land and feeling it out. I mean, just stuff that you wouldn't see on the pictures is beautiful there. The two ponds are much more grand than they look like in pictures. There's some amazing live oak trees there. One right as you drive in that's just stunning. Getting to go in and see the mural that Svan painted there, it looks really cool on the internet, and Svan sent me pictures as he was making it. But standing there and looking at it, there's so much more depth and more power to it when you're there. So that was one of my favorites. Yeah, and I mentioned the amazing food earlier, but it was so good. It's warrants mentioning again. It was fantastic. But yeah, it was a really special event. I'm glad I was able to share it with those folks. Pam asks, what, if any, is the difference in an Asatru wedding and a Justice of the Peace wedding? Difference is, one is getting married and taking those oaths in front of our gods and our folk in a sacred environment, in a sacred context. Both of them are legally binding weddings, but one of them is making your wedding a spiritual act, whereas the other is a mundane, a legal act. So an AFA wedding is not only legal, but it's also a spiritual act in front of our gods and invoking our gods into the wedding and into that relationship. And I think that is very significant. But yeah, I think the question is, almost identical to what's the difference between an Asatru or a Justice of the Peace wedding and, a Hindu wedding or a Christian wedding or any other religious wedding. It's the fact of making that life commitment a religious and a spiritual act. And so, we take those very seriously, and we only do legitimate, legally binding weddings in the Asatru Folk Assembly. Gythia, what bloat do you look forward to attending / hosting the most? Example, Midsummer bloat because of the powerful feeling.
So it's been a very long time since I've been to a Midsummer in California. Not that that's the only time when we have Midsummer celebrations, but the national event celebrations and rituals are always my favorite. I am the Gythia in charge of our Desir bloat at Winter Nights, and despite the fact that I experienced a great deal of existential dread the first time I did it, I've come to really love and cherish being able to do that with people. I really enjoy it. It's a good one for me to perform. Whether it's good for everybody else is up to you. I can't speak to that, but I am never ever going to be sad to be in attendance at one of Matt's Odin bloats. Alsherjargothi is the only person who can do Odin bloat Matt's way. Yeah, everybody could do an Odin bloat, but not like our Alsherjargothi. It's just my opinion on that. But those are my two favorites.
Well, thank you for that, Katie. Lawrence Forbes, again with 10 Canadian dollars. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Question for me. In the short time I've been a member, I've noticed the AFA is mostly silent about and certainly not critical of Christianity. My sense is this is a better to light a candle than to curse the darkness kind of thing. But is this honest considering the damage Christianity has done to our folk? Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. First, you're right. It is a focus on positivity instead of dwelling on negativity. And mostly because it's preaching to the choir. Everyone on here, I say that. We have some folks on here that are not necessarily Asatru that just want to learn, and that's fine. But the vast majority of the people we're talking to, they already get it. They already get that, Christianity isn't right for our folk. And they've already chose to come here. With so many things, I like to focus on the positive and things that we celebrate as opposed to things that we don't like. That being said, I'm always open for any questions. Some people don't like when I get on here and speak negatively of different groups. Like I've said negative things about the Narena Society, but I've done it in the context of answering a question. I don't ever like to just uncalled for bash on something. And I'm not perfect. I'm sure that if you go through and look at these, I've had occasion to do that, but I try not to as a rule. But I do want to answer honest questions. So there's a couple of other things about Christianity. One of the reasons that we don't talk about it is so much of previous modern Asatru has been the definition of their Asatru was how not Christian they were. And that's done a couple of different things. First, it's a disservice to our gods to not worship them on their own merits, but to instead always compare them to something else and then be the default other option. And I think a lot of the time people were being Asatru as a reaction to Christianity as opposed to a genuine faith. And I like that we've moved beyond that. And so I think that's one reason that I'm sensitive to that. The other thing is people mistake a lot of what's bad about Christianity. And I don't want to attack Western spirituality. I don't want to attack church. I don't want to attack all of the great things that exist or people are familiar with within the Christian tradition. What's bad and unhealthy about Christianity is its otherness and its Semitic tradition. And when I say bad, I mean bad for us because it's not ours. And it's trying to fit a square peg, our folk soul, into a round hole of a Middle Eastern faith. Their values and the value, certainly not all of them, but quite a bit of their values are very incongruent with our values. But I don't want people to get the wrong idea about what elements of European Christianity are undesirable and what elements are preservations of our folk traditions. But those are some of the reasons. And I'm always happy to answer any questions about Christianity if they do come up. But that's kind of what I'm thinking and why I don't bash Christianity. The other thing in this day and age, you mentioned the damage that Christianity has done to us. And certainly that's true in a larger historical context. But in 2022, other traditional people of faith are much less of a problem for us than those who don't have a traditional worldview, who don't have faith. The extreme and mentally deranged Marxists that are literally destroying everything that we believe in or doing their best to do so, that's not coming from Christianity. It's coming from a source that's very hostile to Christianity. And so that's one reason that I don't focus on that. I think Christianity is by and large losing a lot of its influence, but I think those other things are the things that are truly scary in this day and age. Falk the Rude with another $25. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Oh, never mind. It's the same $25. I was scrolling the wrong direction on that. Thank you anyways, but disregard on that one. Got one window I scroll down on and one I'm supposed to scroll up on. Nick asks, so you moved across the state for a Hof. How'd that go? And how's the requirements for phrase Hof coming? That one's you, Katie.
Sorry about that. We didn't technically move across the state for a Hof. We moved across the state because that's where we found a house we liked. We also moved across the state because we were trying to stay in Pennsylvania and get as far away from Philadelphia as we could get. And I think we managed pretty well because Erie is about as far away from Philly as you can get. We also had to stay in a well-populated area because Whitney Erickson works from home and needed reliable internet, which we could not have gotten in the mountains, which is someplace we seriously considered for quite a while. We love where we live. We love being close to Ohio so that we can be close to some of our friends. We really miss being closer to our kindred members who live more south central. But we're making it work. And the fact that we will be getting the next HOF is a bonus as far as I'm concerned. To our move, but the move and the HOF were unrelated, technically. May have been in consideration a little bit, but mostly it was we found a house we liked. As far as what we need to do for acquiring next HOF, I'm going to pass this one to Matt because he's got more information than I do.
All right. So where we're at, and I put this in the most recent runestone, but there's 2 steps that we kind of need to do preliminarily before we're actually shopping for a location or for a property. We have a general location, and that general location is very far western Pennsylvania or eastern Ohio, most likely eastern Ohio. So the first step is we need to pay off the debt that we've incurred on Njordshof. So Njordshof is currently 35% paid for. The next thing that we need to do is raise our monthly income average by 18%. And this is important. The challenge is not only to be able to afford a new HOF, but it's also to be able to afford to maintain it over the long run. And that's kind of an unforeseen thing that maybe folks don't focus on. So we have a budgeting plan to where we can pay the bills of the recurring bills of each HOF, as well as have a substantial general fund to do all the other things that the AFA needs to do. And in order to meet that budget where we want it, we're going to need to raise our income by a total of 18%. And this is a lot of progress just in a month. So we're raising that average. I will keep you guys informed on that in the runestone every month until we get there. But that's where that's at. Daniel asks, Katie, you have a flair for the dramatic when it comes to your ritual style. Where does that come from, and what inspires that?
So I chalk that up a lot to my experience being Thadish. I do not think Thadism is a functional model. I don't think it is ever going to properly work for anybody. I think most Thadish groups implode, but I learned a lot of good things, and there were a lot of good people who were Thadish. So I'm not constantly referring to it to make it seem like it's this big bad thing. It's not, and it works for other people. But there were things that they did and things that they didn't do that I learned from. For one, they really liked ritual drama. For example, when we did our May Day celebration, we'd have the fool paraded through, and the women, or the sticks, and they'd beat they'd beat Old Man Winter with the sticks to chase him out, so that the Summer King could come in and sit on the throne, and that was always a lot of fun, things like that. But what they didn't do was engage people in ritual. They, like I said previously in this video, we walked into a circle and we stood there while somebody performed a ritual, often in a different language that, like, a lot of times they would do it in Old Norse, and then they'd have somebody sitting there repeating everything in English so you could understand it. So it's not that we couldn't understand it, it's just, it was extremely boring. And when things are very boring or very dry, or when there's a lot of empty time for your mind to wander, it's very easy for a lot of people to lose focus of what they're there for. Your mind wanders. You start thinking about other things. You notice that you're standing on a rock and it's a little uncomfortable, so you start shifting around a lot. And I've always had trouble standing still. So being bored and standing still are like two things that just don't go together in my world. And because of that, it's always been extremely important to me to try and find ways to keep people engaged. When you're doing ritual, there's a lot of things that you can do to make that happen. Engaging people's senses. Do something, lighting incense so that everybody has that smell of incense when they walk into the circle. Playing music is a good thing. Doing just anything that can get people engaged. I love making sure that there's galdering during ritual. Maybe sometimes I do too much galdering, but I don't want there to be a lot of empty space for people to just stand there. So that's a lot of what drives me to make sure that there's things for people to see, things for people to do, ways for people to be engaged. So that's my main motivation.
So Stephen, already married, do you let the couple renew their vows and consecrate a marriage within the AFA? Absolutely. I mean, I know of several vow renewals. I have participated and done one of those, but I know of several that have been done. That's absolutely a great thing to do. And we do offer that for people who would like to do that. King of Cheese, I have a question about the Hoffs. Are they all abandoned churches that have been retrofitted, or are they chosen for suitability regardless of whether they were churches or not? So a couple of things. First, Odenshof used to be a Grange hall, and so it was kind of a fraternal meeting hall for a long time. But it's a very old building. It's been around since 1938, and it has served a couple of different charitable functions. So it had a charitable zoning. It had been like a church, like a religious school for a time, and I believe it was also at one point used as a church briefly. But the zoning really is there's a couple issues. In this process, we have looked at a lot of different buildings. There's a lot of buildings that are suitable to our needs, but churches are almost always suited to our needs. Fundamentally, they are houses of worship that very, very often come with a ritual space and a kitchen and a multi-purpose / dining room space. And that's certainly very serviceable to what we do. Now you can find other, like fraternal lodges are set up that way. Some event centers are set up that way. There's other buildings that also have those amenities, but what it also really comes down to is zoning. Zoning is such a big deal and can be a very difficult process. And it depends on how the zoning laws are written in an area. In looking at this, we've seen zoning that's pretty much an automatic guarantee you get zoned right if you want to have a church places, but we've also seen places to where it's very difficult. We've seen places to where you have to go to every neighbor within 300 yards, and they have to all not just say it's okay, but actively say they want you there to operate as a church. Most places will grandfather in churches, though. So if something is functioning as a church and it goes from church to church or from house of worship to house of worship, you get to grandfather in the zoning. And that's really an ideal situation. So that's mostly what we look for. Honestly, right now, that is all that we look for unless somebody brings something really special to our attention that does keep that charitable zoning. But yeah, that's our target zone is redone churches or other houses of worship for that matter. All right, guys, we've got one more question left on here. You guys have been great. We've been on for about 2.5 hours. If anybody has additional questions that they want to get answered, please go ahead and get those up. And if not, we will We'll talk to you guys next week. So any questions, get them up, and I will make sure to answer all of those for you. Cliff asks, "Hey, Katie, I will be in trouble, but Owen wants you to know that he ate 6 jalapeno slices, and he is super proud."
Way to go, Owen. He loved spicy stuff when he was a baby, and then he stopped loving spicy stuff. So this is a big step forward. Daddy's probably very proud right now.
No, that's awesome. I'm really glad you let us know that, Cliff. Good job, Owen. All right. So I think we're going to call it a night on Owen's triumphant jalapeno eating.
Can I throw something out there real quick?
You sure can.
Sure. There was a donation or a fundraising event that was going on for a little while with Thorshoff. I don't know if it's gotten lost or like in the shuffle, because I know those things can kind of disappear on our MeWe pages, but they still would very much appreciate any donations you can give, because they are working on fixing some things in the Hoff that really need to get fixed. If you have items that you make or sell or anything like that, and you feel like sending an item down to them as a donation for one of their future auctions, that would be cool too. Because we would really like to make sure Thorshoff it remains awesome and doesn't have falling in roofs and stuff like that. So donate or send items for auctions, please and thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for reminding us of that, Katie. Katie, it's been great to have you on. It's always really nice to talk to you. I know our audience had a ton of questions for you, and you did amazing. We look forward to having you back on.
Thanks, and bye.
Hey, everybody who has asked questions tonight, thank you. Everybody who has gone on and given us tips and super chat stuff over on Entropy, even though it's been glitchy tonight. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate it. I'm looking forward to talking to you guys again next week. And thank you guys so much. It's been really nice to share the evening with you. Hail the gods, hail the folk, hail the AFA, and remember, victory never sleeps.